Today on CrunchWeek, we're talking about Facebook Home, the social network's big push into mobile, the HTC First, which is the first Facebook-centric phone, and our opinions about the announcement from this past week. Welcome to CrunchWeek. I'm Lena.
I'm Greg.
I'm Ryan.
And we're talking about Facebook Home. Greg, you were on the scene at the event yesterday. That was, at Facebook headquarters. What was the energy like for this big announcement?
The energy was good. The event itself was really good too. I was surprised. Events for a lot of people, for a lot of press, they're hard to throw. Facebook did a pretty good job. All the way down to the invite itself at the very beginning was very appley, and it kind of hinted at what was going on and kind of fueled the discussion, but didn't tell you straight out. And then everything about the event was great.
So what do you think about the actual product? I mean, I'm really curious. It's gotten a lot of controversy on whether you'll use it, whether you won't use it. It's a launcher, right? It's basically, it's not an OS, which is what we kind of all thought maybe it could be, but it's a launcher on Android phones. Talk a little bit about that.
Right. So it is a launcher, and what that means is that it's kind of sort of an app, but what it does is replaces your lock screen and your home screen, which are the first two things that you see when you turn on an Android phone. And the benefit to it being a launcher is that over time, Facebook can essentially send this out to any phone and make that phone the Facebook phone. So it's kind of an advantage for them.
What do you think, Ryan?
Well, I think there was a lot of rumors leading up to this. Like once we saw the invite, which was Facebook's home on Android, people were talking about whether it was a new OS, whether it was an actual phone, and someone somewhere along the line got access to the HTC First, or what we found out later was the HTC First, and some of the components or the specs behind it. So I find it really interesting that it isn't an individual device, that this is a way for any Facebook fan on Android to potentially add the functionality to their phone. I think it's a kind of a really interesting, big win for them to go this way as opposed to doing either just a Facebook OS or a Facebook phone.
It also bides them a little time and certainly gives them a learning curve there where they can kind of figure out if an OS makes sense now that they're kind of halfway through with this launcher.
Sure.
I actually really like Chat Heads, which is the new messaging feature that would be on Facebook Home if you installed it, where kind of it overlays chat over all your apps and all your functions on the phone. Yeah. What do you guys think about it? Would you use it?
Yeah, I mean, when I was first hearing about the launcher, I wasn't too sure if I would be the type of person who would use it. Like I liked just the raw Android experience.
Right.
But when they were demoing, your notifications would essentially pop out as your friend's head just floating around there, and then you tap it and it expands out into a full chat window. Then you tap it again and the chat window goes away. You're not switching to a different app just to have your conversations. It's kind of like just floating on top. So it kind of gives Android this weird little subtle windowing system. But of all the features, I would absolutely use that one.
Yeah, I think that messaging for them is like a huge win. I mean, I know it even in my own experience, where right now, to answer an SMS, like you have to jump to a different application or email or whatever, or Facebook message, and this is an easy way for them to bring it right up to the front where you don't have to leave what you're doing and then go back to it. So from that perspective, I think it's really intuitive and actually pretty cool, even though I personally don't use Facebook messaging that much. If I had this functionality, maybe I would.
Yeah, it's got to drive the carriers crazy, though.
I'm sure.
Because right now, Facebook messaging is kind of this detached experience on most phones where if you think, I should message someone real quick, you're going to pop into the SMS app usually, and the carrier's going to get paid for that unless they're, you're on iMessage or something else that's going on behind the scenes through data. With this one, for the most part, you're going to think of using Facebook first.
Right.
So.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's interesting. They did partner with AT&T, right? AT&T was at the event. Yeah. But, that's an interesting point about the SMS. Maybe some of the other carriers will be kind of upset about that. I want to talk a little bit about the phone itself. I mean, there weren't a lot of details, it sounds like, that were released on the specs, but what was your sort of initial thoughts on, like, the design of the phone? Is it iPhone-like?
It's your standard mid-range Android handset.
So it's not iPhone.
Really, I mean, if you looked at it from 20 feet away, you'd go, "Hey, that's a slightly smaller iPhone." But it's a lot of phones have come to look like the iPhone in the past, 3 or 4 years. But really, there's nothing about it that really distinguishes it. There's one kind of interesting thing is that it comes in 4 colors, which is not that big of a deal. But the 2 colors that they chose to go with, besides black and white, are like blinding red and super blue, which kind of implies that they're aiming at a younger audience.
Right.
So
that's kind of what it seems like with the product itself. It seems like it's aimed at a younger audience. What do you think? I mean, I don't think I would use it, but I could see my 16-year-old cousin using it who's on Facebook all the time.
yeah.
Well, so what I found actually kind of interesting about the handset itself, once the HTC first was announced, was that it has a $99 price point. And I could see AT&T and HTC and Facebook, if they really wanted to throw a whole lot of weight behind this, just making it a completely free subsidized phone so that anyone who walks into an AT&T store or whatever carrier internationally carries this phone would be able to get it unsubsidized, like basically subsidized, but without having to pay up front. And that would be huge for people in the low income bracket, for teens, for people who are on other people's phone plans or whatever. So it would be hugely incremental. At $99, I'm not sure if I personally would choose this. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd rather pay an extra $100 and get either the next gen Android phone that's available or whatever recent iPhone's available. So I think that it's kind of in a weird place from a marketing standpoint, but it definitely is going after sort of the teen set or lower income set.
Yeah, I mean, I would say more broadly thinking, some of the themes that came out from the announcement was, is Facebook kind of using Google and Android, the platform, to its own advantage? And is Google going to hate this? Because basically they're putting Facebook on top of all the apps that Google has, Gmail and pretty much everything else that Google has on Android. It's basically taking away the Android experience.
Yeah, something kind of weird there that might upset Google in particular is that, so with the HTC first, when you go into the home screen there, Google will be pretty close to the home screen. But when you download Facebook Home, Google's completely gone. There's no way to access Google Search without dropping back into your original home screen, which is 5 or 6 swipes. And Google makes a lot of money. Like most of the money they make from Android, as far as I know, is from ads on search results. And that's largely because search on Android is pretty much an impulse because you open up the phone and search is there. With Facebook Home, it's gone.
Wow. That's huge.
Yeah.
We'll have to see what Google responds with. And then, yesterday, I believe, or yesterday night, Malik wrote a really interesting piece on sort of the privacy implications of Facebook Home, and Facebook actually has responded as well to that. But, what do you think about the privacy stuff? The company's kind of had some issues with that in the past.
Personally, I feel like, not that we shouldn't be worried about privacy or privacy policy or privacy issues, but really, Facebook has always been at the cutting edge, the bleeding edge, like pushing the envelope on all of these issues. And, for whatever initial blowback there might be on any of these issues, it's sort of like the crowd behind it just doesn't really think about it that much.
Yeah.
And these privacy issues blow over. I mean, when you think about the things that Facebook's released recently, I mean, 5 years ago, Facebook Beacon was a big deal, and then the company repackaged it in 2012, and basically no one really cared. So, I mean, I'm not really sure, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing that there's going to be as much outrage about any of these issues as, there potentially are now.
Greg, you've got the last word before we wrap up. What do you think? It's going to be an issue?
No, I agree with what Ryan's saying in that there are definitely some concerns there, but they're not concerns that are new. They're kind of deeper rooted into Android itself and Android apps. One of the concerns is that, Facebook is going to be able to tell where you are now. It's going to be able to tell your location even when you're not really interacting with Facebook. They could always do that. It's just kind of the way outside of like a super sandboxed environment on something like Android, they can tell your location right through the app. So,
Well, thank you for joining us this week, all about Facebook Home.